GLSEN is about safety, physical and psychological safety, and anti-bullying for sure. If you don't have the funds, then volunteer your time. I mean, be a scholarship reader. The theme of Pride this year was resistance, right? I know that I changed even my own parents just by being me. I felt more tangibly than I'd felt in a really long time. Hi, I'm Jim Fielding. Welcome to Ask for an Answer. Well, hello, kind and beautiful human beings. I am so excited to be doing another episode. We're kind of calling this the LA sessions now. So we're recording live in studio in Los Angeles, which is another beautiful day. It's making me miss being here. And I'm thrilled to welcome George today as my guest, who I'm going to let him tell you what he is, but this is a really special episode to me because I love the work that he does and what he does for our community. I will just say that up front. So welcome. Please introduce yourself and tell people who you are, what you do.
Thank you. My name is Jorge Valencia. It's spelled Jorge, and Spanish is my native tongue, but my parents called me George when everything was okay, and Jorge when I was in trouble, so I always knew where I stood.
That's why I chose George.
And thank you for, yes, but throughout, the interview, if something pisses you off, I'll know if you say Jorge.
Jorge. I'm even going to roll my R.
You can. And give it the whole Jorge Eduardo Valencia. I'm good. So I am the CEO of Point Foundation. We're the nation's largest scholarship granting organization for LGBTQ plus and ally students. And I have had the privilege of being in my role. In January, it'll be 19 years. Can you
I was
believe
going to
that?
ask that. No, I knew it was over 15,
Yeah.
but I was going to add 19 years.
19
January
years.
2026.
Yes.
Wow.
It'll be 19 years. And prior to being at Point Foundation, I was the president and executive director of the Trevor Project.
Yes.
Which, as you know, and you support them, is a life-saving organization for LGBTQ youth. And I had the privilege of being the first non-founder executive director, and I was there 5.5 years before coming over to Point.
Wow. I didn't know that part of the history either.
Yes.
So where did you live for Trevor? Trevor was East Coast based, right?
No, it really was here.
Oh, it was?
So Celeste Lacine, one of the
Yeah.
founders, is on the East Coast and has lived on the East Coast for forever. But the other two founders were here in LA. And so my dining room was our first official office, if you would. And
In true nonprofit style.
Exactly.
Yes.
I sketched out the first logo. It was horrible, really. And I was so happy that when we finally got somebody that was a designer to help us out. But yes.
Well, when I was putting together the Los Angeles schedule, like you were one of the first people I contacted because I love what Point does. You know that. I also love what Trevor does. Shout out to Trevor, but they're not on this episode. So,
Correct.
But in general, I thought what you and I could talk about today, I want to talk about Point and the work you do and the amazing impacts you've made over these last 19 years. And then I just really want to talk about LGBTQ plus philanthropy in general. I was on the National Board of GLSEN. So I always thought of like GLSEN, Point, Trevor. It was kind of like this triangle because all kind of serving the same communities, but coming at it from a different angle. And yes, I've been a supporter of both Point and Trevor for a long time. And I personally, which we'll get into, I've felt more sense of urgency probably this year than any other year, which I think for obvious reasons in our community, but we'll talk about that too. But tell us more about like what Point does and how you do it. And I love getting the emails, just hearing the number of scholarships you've done and stuff. I think it's unbelievable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd love to. And by the way, speaking of that triangle, we used to, among ourselves, talk about how Trevor Project needed to keep the young people alive.
Yes.
GLSEN, keep them safe. In, junior high school.
Yeah.
And then it was up to Point to get them through the next phase of post-secondary education.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And it really was that. And before, I get into some of the other things and how we go about doing our work, I want to say that I loved my work at
Hmm.
Trevor. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's saving
Life saving
lives.
for sure.
And when Point was gracious enough to knock on my door, I actually said no 4 times
Hmm.
because I loved what I was doing. But then I started reading more of the stories of the Point scholars that
Mm.
we support. And it clicked that most of the calls that we were getting at the Trevor Project were young people that did not have role models, did not see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Hmm.
And I realized very quickly that that light and those role models were the Point scholars.
For sure.
And that if I could do anything to help curb the suicide rates
Hmm.
was to help this generation of
Hmm.
leaders stand
Hmm.
out and light the way for others. And
Yeah.
it has been an honor of mine to have worked there as long as I have, to be
Yeah.
still working there. And so, what we talk about when we talk about Point Foundation is it's more than just the monetary
Hmm.
support. Obviously, that's so important.
Hmm.
But on top of that, there is a mentorship component. We do leadership and career training.
Hmm.
And in this environment where community is so important, we provide this community that they so
Hmm.
desperately need.
Well, and you, as a donor and a follower, you feel that community because what I love is you keep in touch with all the scholars and you show what they've actually done in the world, right? And so, you follow them and you check in with them. Like you can tell, like once they're a Point scholar, they're part of the Point family, the Point community. And I totally am with you on the representation thing. And I think back to the triangle and the way that you mentioned it. When I was on the board at Glisten, we did always talk about that because you're right. It was about Glisten is about safety, physical
Yep.
and psychological safety, and anti-bullying for sure. And um, I and we always said that the students that were like running the gay straight alliances or the ally groups we're also going to be like the best future board members, going to be the best future
True.
donors because they understood the impact, they understood the tangibility. I think the same thing about your scholars. Um, they they are changing the world, they are impacting the world. I can tell by the stories you share, and we need more of them. And to me, I've been telling you a lot lately. I think because I turned 60 this year, but like now I'm an elder in the
You're
community,
young.
right? I know, but in our
Yeah.
community, I'm an elder and, I've been doing this a long time, and I want the 20 and 30 somethings. Like, I'm ready to mentor, and I'm ready to support, and I'm ready not to pass on. I'm not gonna stop, but I'm ready for fresh blood, and I'm ready for new insights, and I think particularly in the world we're in now and social media and all these tools, like I want those digital natives. Like I want them to teach us basically. Like I think of the mentorship as like two-way mentorship because any work I do with the younger people in our community, I feel like I learn more from them than I actually am giving back. And I think Point is an incredible enabler of that because
Thank you.
there's doctors and there's lawyers and they're like, I see where all these people are going. And I'm like, that's amazing. So how many scholarships is it? Are you allowed to say how many it is?
Yes, of
Okay.
course.
I don't know if we're,
So we have
you
been
tell me if we're not allowed.
no, of course. No, we've been very fortunate in our lifetime, but let me just say,
Yeah.
especially in the last 5 years,
Hmm.
we've seen the support increase in a way that, just 5 years ago we were supporting 200 scholars, and then it became 400, and then 500, 700. This year we're at 1,000 scholars
Mm,
that we'll be supporting. But
mm,
we've also made some changes internally. And you talk about this generation
mhm,
and, the leaders, certainly not only now, but the future leaders
mhm,
of our community and our country, our world. And one of the things that we came to realize was that the Point Foundation that was created, close to 25 years ago was very specific, and that things were changing in education.
mhm,
The young people that we support were changing as well. And we had to meet them on their journey to whatever post-secondary education looked like. And so, for example, it's more than just supporting individuals that are in undergraduate or graduate school. We now, for a while, have been doing community college scholarships. We started vocational and trade
was wondering about
schools.
trade
Yeah.
schools. Yeah.
A lot of individuals choose that path and are doing great and thriving in that way as
And
well.
we need those people, by
We
the way.
absolutely need them. I mean, I heard the best story about that, which was somebody said how nervous they were to go get their oil changed
Yeah.
because they said, I don't know how to do this.
Totally.
It was a gay boy, and he said, I don't know what to do. I'm afraid I'm going to get picked on and bullied.
Yeah.
And then I read this fantastic story about a group or a company, I think it's in Washington or Portland, and it is lesbian owned and run, that have this like body shop. And, it's like, yeah, I'd feel comfortable going there.
Of
It's
course.
member of the community. You're not going to hopefully
They'll
get
be
picked
judged.
on in any
Right,
way.
you're not gonna get judged.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So we also support internships and professional development paths as well. So we're really making an effort to help as many individuals as we can thrive in whatever post-secondary education they want.
So they can come to you basically at any age then, right? If you're doing internships and stuff, it's not just like to your point, people who are in undergrad or grad programs. I mean, what age are you serving? Like 18?
We've had individuals that start college as early as 16 years
I know,
of
because
age.
now they have all these AP classes and
yes,
stuff,
and
too.
we've supported that young all the way to people in their 50s and 60s. So
Amazing.
look, if you ever want to go back to school,
I
I'm
was
just
like, maybe I
saying,
could be a point scholar. I went back for my coaching certificate.
There you go.
I mean, but
So there's an age limit.
that's nice. That's nice. And you have, I mean, it's broad geographic reach too, like, right? I mean,
It's nationwide,
yeah.
and we also support individuals that are international but are studying at a U.S.-based and accredited institution.
And what are the criteria? Like, I know there's different scholarship funds, but in general, what is the criteria to be supported?
So they're all different. You're right. I mean, some of them do have a GPA requirement, but as we've begun administering scholarships, we also want to. So let me put it this way. If an individual comes up to me and says, I want to support some LGBTQ students, and I was a C+ student, so I want to provide scholarships to individuals who have a 2.0, 2.5 GPA, we're not going to turn them away.
Right.
Because we have thousands and thousands of young people that come to our website every year to apply for a scholarship. And if we can support more individuals in any way possible and also honor the wishes of a donor, we're going to do that.
Yeah.
And so we have administered scholarships that have different criteria. I would say that overall, what we look at is we want individuals that want to do good and have a goal to do good, not only in their own personal lives, but in their communities and in society. And that can look different in many ways. We used to have a very rigid way of looking at leadership as an example. And the more we started to have these conversations about what leadership looks like, we recognized that for some young people whose parents work or come from a single parent household, whose parents are working day and night, have multiple jobs, that individual, that student seeking a post-secondary education, coming home and helping their siblings with their homework is leadership.
For sure.
Helping with the house is leadership. They might not have the benefit of going and being a part of a club or doing something like that, but we should not throw away the leadership skills of taking care of their own as well.
Life skills. Those are
Correct.
life skills,
Yes.
by the way. And so they apply online. It's the
pointfoundation.org.
Org. That's what I
Yes.
want to make sure we're going to say it about 18 times. The pointfoundation.org. They apply online, and then is there manual screen? Like how do you screen? Like, what's the selection process like? Like, because I'm thinking of your staff. Like,
Right.
I mean, is there? Are they
It's
interviewed? I
it's
mean,
rigorous,
I was
and
gonna
I'll tell you
say, I
that
was like,
when I think last year for just one of our scholarships, we had 4,000
mm,
applications for one
that's
alone,
exactly what I
and
was thinking.
so we certainly couldn't manage that internally.
Mm-mm.
We have the benefit of some very committed volunteers
Yes.
across the country
Who screen?
that
Yeah.
help us with the reading of applications. And of course, our team just works hard. Our board members read
Hmm.
applications as well. And there are various steps along the way
Yeah.
in terms of getting to the individuals that are specific to
That's
that
awesome.
particular scholarship that we're
Yeah.
looking to
I
fill.
mean, in the queer philanthropy circle at IU, we do grants and it's the same thing. Like there's always more need than available funds. And so that winnowing process, it's not anywhere the scale that you're dealing with, but it's very similar for us. And it's all volunteer driven and reading lots of applications and ranking and all that kind of stuff. So that makes sense.
And look, as exciting, and you know what this is like,
Yeah.
as exciting as it is to get to 1,000,
Yeah.
it's like there are another 3,000 in just one
I
scholarship alone
know.
that could use help. And I have to say, when you get to a certain place in this application process and in the selections process, you quickly recognize how everyone is just deserving of support and a
Hmm.
chance for a better life. And so
Yeah.
we keep pushing harder and harder to raise more money so that we can continue to provide more scholarships.
Right. Because that, and Lord knows I know the nonprofit world from the volunteer side. I'm assuming, but you correct me if I'm wrong, if there were more funds available, you could give more scholarships. So it's not that you don't have qualified candidates, there's just a limit in.
Your assumption is
Okay.
absolutely correct.
Right.
And not only in terms of the financial support,
Hmm.
but the other programmatic support
Yes.
that we have to
Yes.
provide as well. And that requires staffing. It
Hmm.
requires money to make things happen, whether it's
And training of the staff. Right.
conferences
I
and
was gonna say, yeah,
absolutely
it's
all of
like,
that
yeah.
requires financial support.
Got it. Yeah. Welcome to nonprofit.
Exactly. I've been in this
I was
place for
gonna
a
say
while.
you.
It is very fulfilling. I mean, you know this,
I
so
know
what can I say?
it's yeah. I mean, I think the thing for me, and I've encouraged people in my network and our community to get involved. I mean, we always talk about time, talent, and treasure. You know that as a volunteer, we always talk about time, talent, treasure, and testimony. But time, talent, and treasure, and of course, money is important. But I've said to a lot of people, if you don't have the funds, then volunteer your time. I mean, be a scholarship reader, right? Like
Absolutely,
get
please.
trained. We used to say this, like, listen, like get trained to help gay straight alliances and things like that. So um I think now more than ever, with the way the world has been this past year, I think people are looking for ways to impact the community and to get involved in the community. And I keep trying to push whatever nonprofit speaks
Mhm.
to them. Like if yours speaks to them, great. If Trevor, if Glisten, if HRC, there's a lot, right? I tell people do your homework, go on the websites, read the work they do. And if something calls you, raise your hand. I mean,
Absolutely.
especially again, my elders, right? The people who are changing gears or pivoting or maybe working part-time or working fractionally. Like we need that experience. We need that support. And of course, write checks. Please write checks. The Point Foundation, write check, thepointfoundation.org.
Right,
But yeah, right. And unrestricted funds. It's another thing I learned. Like, write unrestricted funds. Trust the charity to use your money
right,
well.
right.
And I'm not a great example of that because I do a lot of restricted giving, but there's other. In your case, I can do unrestricted because I know where it's going. So, what has been the impact? Let's just say the change in the administration, which would have happened anyway, right? There was an election last year. We had an inauguration in January of 2025. The change in the administration, the cabinet secretaries, and all that kind of stuff. Like, how is that impacting the work that you do?
Well, let me go back just a little bit, if you're okay with it, to COVID for a
Mhm. Oh,
second,
yeah.
because you have COVID, and while members in our community may recognize this, I think it's it's worth reminding ourselves that during COVID, when university campuses were closing down,
Yes.
and we had members in our community or allies that could not go back home to a welcoming environment, they were left without a place to live.
My God.
If they, and it's expensive to go to school, you rely many times on the internet on campus. So now you don't even have internet access.
Mm-mm.
Some of them had jobs on school campuses or at a restaurant, let's say, that had to close down because
Yeah.
of COVID. So all of a sudden, you have a group of individuals who really had nowhere to go
Mm-hmm.
and no support. We launched an emergency fund for things just
Mm.
like this. It's like, I don't know how I'm going to feed myself this
Right,
next
because the
month.
dining halls are
I
closed.
don't know
Yeah.
where I'm going to live. So we have a generation of individuals that were faced with that environment,
Mm-hmm.
where at least on campuses at that time, pre-COVID,
Mm-hmm.
we were seeing safe spaces for
Mhm.
them,
Mhm.
for communities of color, for LGBTQ and ally individuals. So there was a place where they could at least feel acceptance among their own. And
Mhm.
so COVID comes in, it kind of wipes that out.
Mm.
You know, you don't have that at all. And then we are now in, once again, an environment where words like, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion are forbidden
Yeah,
words,
dirty
you
words,
know,
yeah.
and they are really the cornerstone of thriving universities and
Yes.
campuses
Yes.
and countries,
Yes.
frankly. And so it has been very difficult for many of them. They can
Mhm.
no longer go to a place where they feel safe. They can no longer rely on each other. They have to be
Mhm.
careful how they speak, what they say. So
Mhm.
it has provided challenges. And what I will say is that I'm extremely grateful. And I say this from the bottom of my heart
Mhm.
and on behalf of all of our board and staff and scholars. People have stepped up
Mhm.
to allow us to create that community through our scholarships and providing more scholarships to individuals.
It's
But it
amazing.
is tough. It is difficult for them. And it is tough to see that. It's tough to watch that and see them getting stripped of their identity.
Yes.
If anything, I think we have seen this just aggressive assault on diverse voices and
Mhm.
trying to erase LGBTQ history and our community. And I'll tell you what gives me hope. Our young people give me hope.
Mhm.
And I am reminded over and over of our history,
Mhm.
of the history of the LGBTQ plus and allied community, that it has never been one of retreat.
Mm-mm.
It has been one of pushing forward. And
Mhm.
I'm reminded of our history. I mean, we have Stonewall. We have the AIDS crisis where
Yeah.
nobody was coming to the aid of
Right.
our own, and we did.
Right.
We have fought hard, we've organized, and we have loved fiercely.
Mhm.
And we're going to continue to do that.
Well, I think it's interesting because the week that we're in, World AIDS Day, right? We had Monday was World AIDS Day, and we had an administration that did not recognize it for the first time
Like
in
18 years or
yeah,
something like that. It's
exactly. And
crazy. Yeah.
but on social media, I saw our community step up
Mhm.
and recognize World AIDS Day. Like
Yes.
the nonprofit world, the NGO world, the United Nations, like, I mean, other entities, but also just our community. I mean, I did a post on my own platforms because I was like, okay, government's not going to post. It's still part of our history. And I really, Pride Month, which I think Pride is so long. Like I live in Atlanta, so we don't have Pride till October. But like June last year, I really took to heart what you're talking about, which is about educating, right? And posting about Stonewall and
Right.
posting about the heroines and heroes in our community that did pave the way. And again, I'm of a certain age where I lived through the AIDS crisis. I was in San Francisco. One of my first volunteer gigs was the AIDS quilt um and delivering food through Project Angel Food, right? And um that the tangibility of that and I also lived at a time in the community, even in San Francisco, where we met in basements and we met underground. I
Yeah.
mean, I hate to say it, but we didn't retreat, to your point. I mean, we always figured it out. We always and I think it's easier in the big cities. I think it's easier in the so-called blue states. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, for sure. But I live in a red state in Georgia, but Atlanta obviously is very blue. And Pride this year was very prideful. But the theme of Pride this year was resistance, right?
Right.
Roots and resistance. And um, I just think that goes back to the mentoring piece. Like, yes, the scholarship piece at point, but the mentoring piece and the community that you create. And I think your story about COVID is so important for our listeners and viewers to really think about, because it's something that I fear in general and what I see happening in universities and institutions of higher education across the United States. I mean, they're under tremendous pressure to comply with new guidelines, to comply with, federal funding, research grants, all of that kind of stuff. And what's at risk is academic freedom. What's at risk is freedom of speech. What's at risk is physical and psychological safety.
Correct.
And that makes me sad, because even my alma mater, Indiana University, when I went there in the 80s, we didn't have an LGBT center. I didn't really realize when I chose the school that it was going to be one of the top ranked schools for community for LGBTQ. It was not part of my criteria. I just thought it was a really good school. But somehow through osmosis, I got there, right?
Amazing.
And I was able to then do all the exploring that you have to do as you're going through this self-awareness and identity. And that's the thing that scares me for these kids, is that college and university, particularly the four-year schools, residential schools, to me, you learn more on campus and in the dorms than you actually do in the classroom. No offense against any of the professors. And COVID hurt that so much.
It did.
And now these restrictions on student groups and on student gatherings and on
Publications.
yeah, I was saying, Lord knows we have
Yes.
that. That is what I feel really sad about. And I think not only sad, but concerned about what that means 10 years from now. Like, that's what I keep talking about. It's like these children, and they're still children, they're young adults, that we're not giving the best experience to or exposing them the most to, they are going to be leaders eventually. And they're not going to be as equipped as I think they need to be.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Think about this for a
But
second.
I think you guys do a lot.
Well,
to
what you
help.
just said struck me right now that
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, I remember coming out to LA and going to a gay bar, and some of the windows were still darkened.
Yes.
You
oh,
know,
for
and you
sure.
couldn't even go in. I got
a lot
egged.
of times they didn't have signs.
Right. I came out of a club and got egged with my friends, you know?
Mhm.
But I'll tell you, those things made us stronger
Mhm.
and resilient.
It did.
And it totally bites right now for this generation of LGBTQ
Yeah.
students. But you know what? They're going to be stronger
Mhm.
and more equipped because of that alone
Right.
to fight down the road.
Mhm.
And what
That's so smart.
I really believe that. I have faith in these young people.
Yes.
They are doing incredible things right now. When I just think of, I went to Brigham Young University, okay? Go figure. There was no LGBT anything in there. And yet, they have an LGBTQ group on campus.
Yes.
And that, to me, is progress,
It is.
And when I look at everything, and maybe I do this just to keep myself
Yeah.
sane and
Yeah.
positive in a way, I do see the work that they're doing. I do see what they're posting.
Mhm.
And it makes me so proud
Mhm.
to help them in whatever way I can, because they
That's
in turn
huge.
are going to be helping those that come behind them.
I love that, George, because you see the green shoots, right? You see, and we need that, right? And I think elevating those stories and amplifying those stories is something those of us that have platforms and are in this space, we need to do more of, right? Because I said, I grew up my whole life, I would say people would have said, if it was optimist or pessimist, I was definitely an optimist. I was definitely a, glass half full kind of person. anything's possible and hard work, very Midwestern, right? Like
Right.
hard work and ethics and not lying and all that kind of stuff, you're going to get rewarded. Like that's the way I was raised. Golden rule, treat each other well. Like that was my Midwestern, like that was instilled in me and in our family. And I think the, and I think it's interesting when you take it back to COVID because it's not just this administration. I mean, just the way the world has changed.
Exactly.
Um, I now say to myself, like if somebody said, describe yourself, I would still say I'm an optimist, but I'm also more of a realist and a pragmatist now. And I think those of us with platforms like you have, like I have, other people we know, we do need to kind of give some guidelines to people and say, this is the kind of stuff we should be doing now.
Right.
Because I do see, and I don't think that's Point Foundation's job, by the way, but I think there's other national organizations, I'm not going to call out names, but there's other large LGBTQ organizations that have different missions than you have. I'll say it like that. That I
Yes,
think
they do.
could be doing a better job of not giving us marching orders, but providing more structure, providing more speaking points, because I feel like we're more reacting to things that happen, right? And it's like something's happening almost every day in the community, and you're like, oh my God, now we got to do this, and oh my God, we got to do this. And I want us as a community to step back and be a little bit more organized, be a little bit more on. I don't want to call them speaking points or, it's not like a communication plan or a PR plan, but sharing more stories like what you're sharing
Right.
to to elevate and amplify our community, I guess is what I'm saying. Because there are positive stories out there. And yes, we have to acknowledge the negative stories as well and the bad things that are happening. But to your point, in the arc of history in our community, we've had bad things happening for a long time. And we've always come out. And
Yeah.
and I think those of us that did live through the AIDS crisis, I don't know if there's anything that we're ever going to go through that was as bad as the AIDS crisis. And AIDS is still here and HIV is still here. But the height of that was terror. I mean,
Right.
that was
Yeah.
just not an easy time. And we made it. We made it. But we made it through charities and like we didn't rely on the government to do it at all. I mean, we couldn't rely on the government because they weren't even acknowledging it. It really did come from the community. And honestly, even churches and allies, to your point. And I say this all the time, and I think a lot of the work you do, allies are such a huge part of it. I remind the younger people in our community, we could not be here where we are if it wasn't for allies.
You're absolutely
I
right.
mean, it's
We
like
could not.
we are a minority. Whatever the number is, like who knows, 10 to 25%. Like I don't know what the minority is now, but number is. But we will always be a minority in this country, in this on earth. And that means we have to have allies. And to me, the way that you have allies is by sharing stories and educating, right? You have to demystify and take the teeth out of the argument that we're broken or that we're recruiting people. Like all the horrible stuff that comes from the other side, we have to combat that. But we combat that with, you said it earlier, visibility, representation, sharing stories. I mean, doing podcasts, writing books, giving speeches, volunteering for charities. Like we have to be out there because I know even in my own world, in my own family, I was definitely raised in a very racist, homophobic environment. And I know that I changed aunts and uncles' minds and even my own parents just by being me, right? It wasn't easy, but once they realized that I wasn't broken and that I was going to be okay and that I was going to still be successful and I was going to be a viable member of society, like
Right.
all those things we were told we weren't going to be, they changed. I'm not saying they started going to PFLAG meetings, but I mean, they changed
Right.
and they became more tolerant. And that to me is something I really want us to get back to. That's why I've been on these messages of authenticity and radical kindness because I'm like, I'm not asking you to love me or tell me I'm perfect. I'm just saying, give me the space and the grace to let me be me. Just like the same way I want you to be you.
Beautifully said. And you're
I
right.
want you to be you. Like
Yeah.
I want everybody to, that's one of the things I did love about Glisten was we had the numbers that showed if we made a school, a middle school or a high school, safe for the LGBTQ community, it actually became safe for all students because what we were training about, bullying and tolerance and cooperation and collaboration, applies to all students, right? And so a safe space, if it was safe for LGBTQ, it became safe for everybody. And we knew from the research we were doing, like the worst bullying in high school was girl on girl bullying. It had nothing to do with like the mean girl syndrome. Sorry, ladies, but that was the worst bullying we saw. We would train on that, right? But we were coming at it through like training and protecting the LGBTQ community, faculty, staff, students. But we actually were raising the boats, I used to say. It's like the school, if a school was called a safe space and earned that moniker from GLSEN, it was safe for everybody, not just marginalized communities.
Yeah.
And I think that's the world now. Because I think a lot of people, it doesn't matter what community you're from, there's anxiety right now in a lot of communities because of, what's going on in the world. There's anxiety. And that's not sexuality driven.
No.
I mean, we might be feeling it more than other parts of the community, but I think there's anxiety across the board.
And if you have intersecting identities, even more so, right? You're gonna feel it multiple ways.
Huge, huge. And I think so much of your experience, I mean, having lived here in LA for so long and being back, so much of your experience, and I know you know this, it's also where you are geographically in the country. Are you urban? Are you rural? Are you Kansas? Are you New York City? I mean, your experience is different.
You know what's so interesting? I would agree with you. And
Yeah.
let me say that. I mean,
Where
just
did
having-
you grow up?
I
Did
grew
you
up in Texas.
I was going to say, yeah.
So I grew up in Texas, and I went to school in Utah, and I was just in New York about a month ago, and there's this little market right by the hotel where I was at. I was there for a while, so I would go to the market,
Right.
every other day or whatever. And there was a gentleman working behind the counter, and he had an LA Dodgers hat. And it was during the World Series, so
Yeah,
of
of
course,
course.
I was like, "Oh, hey, I'm with you here," and it's like, "I like your cap," and he's Latino, and so we spoke in Spanish a bit. And he said, "I used to live in Los Angeles." I said, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Why did you leave?" And he said, "It was racist."
Woo!
Exactly. And I'm thinking, what? Like I'm Mexican.
How
That's
old was
okay.
this person?
He probably in his 30s or so.
That's
and he
sad.
found Los Angeles to be racist. It's everywhere, right?
But New York wasn't.
New York, he didn't feel he didn't feel it in New York, probably because of
Interesting.
the numerous types of ethnicities that you
Yeah, I was
see
gonna say
represented there
that.
all the
Yeah,
time.
all the time.
And,
It's New York is definitely a
one
melting
could
pot.
say where you live. That could be in many places.
Yeah.
But the reality is that exists even in places like LA. And there is discrimination of LGBTQ people in LA. We've seen this firsthand with our scholars. And so I applaud your message. I think it is so important that we try extra hard to be kind with each other.
Well, it's so funny you say that, George, because, I moved to Atlanta. It's coming up. April will be 5 years. So let's say 4.5 years. And I wrote, after being there for like 18 months, I wrote one of my newsletters, and the title was, "Did 25 years in California Make Me Soft?" Because moving out of, and let's be clear, I lived in San Francisco, I lived in Los Angeles,
Right.
all over Los Angeles, and then I lived in Laguna Beach. So I was in a bubble,
Yes.
right? For sure. And
A pretty bubble.
a pretty
mind
bubble,
you.
like I was happy. And I just assumed if people weren't, obviously not everybody was in our community, but I just assumed everybody was like at least tolerant, or in many cases, a true ally. That was like an assumption I made.
Right.
Moving to the South, and Atlanta, by the way, is a bubble, but I realized, and it was a little bit like I think of your students, like, so for me, and you'll understand this as an adult, when you move to a brand new city, like I had to get new doctor, new dentist, new place where you get your hair cut, like all that stuff, right? All these things that I just taken for granted being in the same place for a long time. And I told the story of like, it was almost like I was coming out again, right? Because you have to I had to kind of put my gaydar on again and like my spidey sense, my protective things, because I was like, I was researching, am I going to be comfortable in this dentist's office? Right? Am I going to, because I was so out and so authentically me, but I realized in the South, I needed to be smart about this, right? And I was going into restaurants and I was going into clubs and I was going into new volunteer organizations. And I just couldn't make the assumptions that I made when I was living in Los Angeles Laguna. And so I basically the summary of the piece was yes, it had made me soft. Like, and that I had to like sharpen up again. And then to be in the relationship I was, because to your point, the intersectionality, like I fell in love with a black man. And so we were like an interracial gay couple, like with age difference. Like, and I was like, oh my gosh, how many more targets can we put on our back? Right. And I could watch if we walked in as a couple or if he walked in first or if I walked in first, like I felt racism. I felt homophobia. I felt more tangibly than I had felt in a really long time. And so I think your story about New York is so important because it's everywhere.
It is.
It's
Sadly.
it's sadly everywhere. And that's the thing. So many people have said, "Oh, you know, I'm going to move to a blue state, or I'm going to move to Portugal, or I'm going to move, you know, like people of means, or like I'm going to move to Europe." And I'm like, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And I I feel like it's our job to stay, and I don't want to say fight because it's not fight. I just stay and educate, stay and work harder. That's why I added radical. I was just talking
Right.
about kindness for a long time. I added radical on the front of kindness because I was like, it's
It is
radical to be
radical right
kind,
now.
right? I mean, it's
Exactly.
radical to be kind. And I'm like, that's my little resistance thing is radical kindness. I mean,
You said something that that I've been thinking about for a
yeah,
while. Is it if certain things make one soft, you
yeah,
know, and we know that you said meeting, embasements as a
yeah,
member of the community and what
yeah,
that would look like, that made you
it
stronger. You
did.
became resilient. You identified who you were and what you
Yeah.
were willing to stand up for.
Hmm.
This is the part that worries me about what we've been seeing for a while in our education system, that topics that are uncomfortable for
Hmm.
people, and I include myself in that,
Hmm.
people of our community, that if people are uncomfortable with a certain subject matter, that the immediate reaction is, I'm going to remove myself
Yes.
from this
Stick my head in the
situation.
sand. Totally.
Exactly. And what I have heard over and over from alumni is that they felt they were coddled in college. And then they were coming to point, and in a way, were being coddled there.
Yes.
And now they're in the real world. And my goodness,
Cold.
what am I going to do?
Hmm.
Because I can't
Hmm.
just walk out of this unless I'm ready to lose my job.
Hmm.
And that is one of the reasons we added career training into what
Yes.
we do,
Yes.
because at times it will be important to absolutely stand up for yourself when people are being disrespectful.
Yeah.
But if a subject is being brought up that might make you uncomfortable, maybe you don't want to hear it,
Yeah.
but it's for the purpose of learning and growing or understanding people that feel differently than
Yes.
one, it is
Yes.
important to understand how to work through it. And and so I have wondered at times if we were raising a generation of individuals that were not going to be able to fight on
Yeah.
and fight forward. A- And then I see the scholars who support, and I'm like, nope, you know what? We are in good hands, and we
Mhm.
just need to continue supporting their efforts and teaching them.
But I love this about this part of Point, right? And I'm even thinking like as a donor and other donors I know of like how we can support this part. Like in my mind, my wheels are turning because I think what you're talking about is so important of like life skills and how how to how to professionally have conflict and like how to disagree without it like degenerating into finger pointing and bullying and all that kind of stuff because when I'm out talking a lot about authenticity and authentic leadership, the book, I mean, a lot of the themes in the book, I sometimes get challenged by young people because I'll tell them there was times where it was like the code switching, where like I had a switch on my arm where I would read the room and be like, okay, I cannot go full tilt here. I'm
Right.
going to pull it back. And then they would say, a young person would say to me, well, that sounds inauthentic. And I'm like, no, 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 that is not inauthentic. Like I have versions of myself. That's also, it goes back to the physical and psychological safety. Like there's
Right.
times I knew I can't amp it up or ramp it up. But then there was other times where I had to ramp it up because I had to make a point and I had to represent. And I think you learn a lot of that through experience, unfortunately, but I do think there's ways that we could be teaching that and mentoring that. And one of the scholarships that I did in Indiana is to send people to advocacy and leadership seminars and trainings. Like, so whether that's national meetings or, speaker training and things like that, because I felt like you have to learn how to be an advocate, basically. You have to learn how to be a leader. And it doesn't mean that I was trying to push everybody into nonprofit service or board service or things like that. But it was just like, I really felt like that was something that was missing in our community.
Absolutely.
And we were talking before we started the podcast. That's one of the scholarships that's been challenged in this environment because I specifically wrote it that I wanted it for LGBTQ students, not allies.
Right.
And that is a scholarship that I would talk to you about moving to
Right.
Point, because a public university is going to have trouble administering that scholarship.
Yes.
Because it's specifically for people from our community learning how to be leaders in our community and for our community. And
Right.
I think it's so necessary. I really, really do. Okay, well, I'm getting the signal, so I'm going to be good.
Oh.
We got about 5 more minutes.
All right.
We got 5 more minutes to go. But again, thepointfoundation.org, like that's how people get involved, right? That's how volunteers want to get involved too, right? That's how they donate.
Cool.
Donate,
Donate,
buddy.
volunteer.
Yeah.
No, then in front of it, just pointfoundation.org.
Yeah.
Or just Google Point Foundation. You'll see us there. Many ways
You'll
to get
find him.
involved.
You'll find him.
Absolutely.
He's very easy to find. Well, as we wrap up, like what's one piece of wisdom you want our listeners or viewers to leave with?
Oh my gosh. Hope. I really think that we need to be more hopeful. It's so tough right now. I feel like every day something just chips away at that. And so I have been looking for things, people, situations
Yes.
that give me hope. And I'll tell you, I made a goal this year to listen to more audiobooks when I'm doing whatever
Yes.
that were either written by LGBTQ people or about LGBTQ people.
Yes.
And my goal was 1 a month. I've already listened to 36. And I have to say, listening to these, even if it's from a queer author or an ally of our community,
Yeah.
gives me that hope
Yeah.
to just face another day of what may be coming our way.
That's so good. All right, I'm going to do 2 plugs because of that now. So, my book club at allstora.com, Leading
There
with
you
Pride
go.
book club is exactly that. That's why I did the book club, because it's like I'm choosing books about leadership, about life, written from our community for our community. And you can subscribe at allstora.com, and it's a monthly book club. But I think the other one is go to pointfoundation.org and subscribe to your newsletter and your regular, because those videos that you put in and those stories that you put in and the photos that you put in, those are moments of hope. Because when you're highlighting the Point Scholar of the Week or the Point Scholar of the Month, there's a lot of hope in there. And to me, that you see those green shoots every day. But for those of us
Yep.
that aren't in Point Foundation every day, or aren't in Trevor Project every day, to their credit, or Glisten, but I think your updates are really, like, I'm excited when they hit the inbox, right? And they're ones that I always click on because it just gives you that. And they're not long videos. I think you guys are doing a great job with like very condensed storytelling that's
Thank you.
impactful. But that, I think, again, for our listeners and our viewers, I mean, those are the kind of messages you want in your inbox, because there are those moments of, wow, look at that student. Like, look at that student. And like I said, when you do the alumni, like 5 years later and 10
Right.
years later, where are they now kind of thing. That is moments of hope. So I'm so glad you were here today.
Oh,
I'm so glad.
Thank you for inviting
Thank
me.
you and your staff for everything that they do. We need you now more than ever. You know that. I want to shout out our friend David Jacobs, who has been a mentor. When we talk about mentoring, I mean, David Jacobs has been a mentor of mine, and I know he's been a big supporter and fan of Point for a long time. So much. I mean, he knows he's a little bit older than I am. So like, I feel tremendous responsibility to kind of like try to carry on his legacy in my own way. And that's the way he mentored me for the last 10 or 15 years that we've known each other.
He's
So
impacted the lives of so many.
And he does
our
it. He does it
scholars.
through representation.
He
To your
does.
point,
He
George, he
does.
does it through role modeling the proper behavior. He's a gentleman always. He educates and amplifies constantly. And when he has a point to make, you are schooled.
And he does it unapologetically because he
Unapologetically.
knows. Exactly. I'm
He
with
was
you.
there. He was
Yeah.
there. And I think, yeah, there's people. And the thing I love about the work we do with the Queer Philanthropy Circle, what you do at Point Foundation, is I'm now seeing the next generation that like, okay, if I'm going to be David next, like who's going to be the next David and Jim? Like, I mean, you start to see the future. And to me, everything I'm doing at this point in my life, I'm not trying to be morbid, but I know I'm in the last quarter, right? I mean,
Don't be
there's-
morbid.
I know, I'm not being morbid. I'm just saying, like, there was something about turning 60 this year that made me really realize if life is divided in quarters. Like, do I want to make it to 90 or 100? Of course I do, but only if I'm vital. I say all the time.
Yes.
I do not want to be dependent on anybody. But you do start to feel that. You do start to feel legacy. And I think especially because I don't have my own kids, right? I never was in really a position or in the right relationship to make a family or have a family. But I have this extended family of, nieces and nephews and godchildren, but also all the people that, you impact through your philanthropy. I mean, that to me is so huge. And I think that's what you guys do at Point Foundation. And so again, thank you. And
My honor. Thank you for your support.
and we are going to push
thank
this
you.
episode everywhere. When is your actual anniversary in January?
The first.
Oh, it
I
is?
was hired on the
Okay,
first.
I think we're going to have to make you one of the first episodes then in the new year, because that's just a note to myself. But
I start on the second, but my agreement
That's
was on the first. It
good.
started. Yes.
I love that. Well, happy anniversary early.
Thank you. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you.
Thanks for spending this time with us on Ask for an Answer. If this conversation sparks something for you, don't just nod and move on. Take one idea, one question, one uncomfortable and bring it into your next meeting, your next one-on-one, or your next big decision. That's how this becomes a practice, not just a podcast. If you're leading a team, a classroom, a company, or just your own next chapter, you don't have to have it all figured out. You do have to be willing to listen, to ask better questions, and to create the kind of safety where people will actually tell you what they see. If this episode was useful, share it with someone who's in the arena with you. And if you want more tools, stories, and real talk leadership moments, make sure you follow the show and leave a review so others can find us. I'm Jim Fielding. Thank you for being here, for leading with less armor and more intention. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep asking for an answer.